This week, the schools are back open, and I can hear the cries of joy from everyone that's been homeschooling. So we thought we'd go back to school, and we have caught up with the head of cricket at Charterhouse School. And those of you who know your cricket, particularly you Surrey fans out there, will know the name Martin Bicknell. Martin, welcome to 98 Not Out.
Thank you. Good morning.
How's school going?
It's good to be back. Like you mentioned, we were very much part of the homeschooling experiment that was going on at home. It wasn't a pleasant experience with my two little ones, but we got through it. It's nice to go back to work and go mix with some older kids and get some cricket underway.
Yeah, have you got outdoor nets in action?
We have. We've been indoors, but we are actually having the first outdoor net today, which will be good. The boys are craving going outside and getting some fresh air and using the nets outside, and it'd be nice to get some fresh air and not stare at four walls of a sports hall.
It's a funny time of year, really, isn't it? Because in normal circumstances, this is sort of rugby term or football term, isn't it? But and then after Easter, cricket starts in earnest. So
it's been a very strange year. We haven't had a school fixture for a year now. So it's we're hoping to start back in middle of April with the cricket fixtures. We're still waiting to hear on sort of what we're allowed to do, whether we have to go year group bubbles or we're allowed to play a full first team. So we are in the hands of senior management, and we're waiting for the final judgment on what they see as fit. But I'm very hopeful that A, fixtures will happen, and B, that we'll be able to field a first 11 that's strong enough to compete.
Now, in the 90s, when you were in your pomp, you were very recognisable for a long, floppy 90s style fringe, which looks, by the looks of it, has disappeared. Mine has resurfaced because the hairdressers aren't open, and I don't trust my wife or daughter with the scissors. I guess you're seeing a few sights with boys returning for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I've never seen so many man buns. It's been extraordinary, and the boys are loving it. You know. Because normally, you're not allowed to have long hair as a boy at school. So they're taking full advantage, and we might not see a haircut until the end of the summer, I think.
Yeah. So let me take you back to your early days and school days. Tell us how you got into the game of cricket and how it developed that you got to the highest level.
Well, I was lucky to have a brother who was cricket obsessed like me. So we played all day, every day in the summer. Outside in the garden, down the side of the alleyways, going cycling to Normandy Cricket Club, playing all day there on our own. And then we eventually got involved with a cricket club called Normandy. And then from there, we sort of just got a bit better. And then I moved to Guildford when I was 12, and the hope of sort of playing at a slightly bigger club and better opportunities. Got involved in the Surrey system from 11. Made my way through those days playing, travelling around the sort of southeast of England, playing Surrey versus Middlesex and Kent and Essex and all those top sides, loving every minute of it. And then eventually I got my chance with Surrey as a 16-year-old. I got selected to play a couple of second 11 games. I did well in those, and then got offered a contract at the end of that summer in '85.
You make it sound quite seamless, but I guess there was a lot of competition in the area in those days. Was Graham Thorpe one of your?
Yes, he was my age group. We played all the way through from age 11 all the way through until he decided that he was going to try his hand at football. He sort of disappeared for a couple of years, and then he came back on the Surrey staff, and it was like he'd never been away. He was a sensational schoolboy cricketer. He just scored runs for fun. He also bowled, opened the bowling with me.
Did he?
Bowled, same pace as me. He was just too good for that age group, and he was blessed with having football ability as well. And he thought he could give it a go and play football. He played for England under 15s, I think, at football.
Oh wow!
I sort of stayed on the cricket route because I wasn't quite good enough at football. So I got my opportunity at Surrey. Slightly ahead of him because he was doing other things. But then when he turned up at Surrey in '88, I think, he was straight off the block. You could see he was going to be a world superstar, and that's how it panned out.
Okay, you're a big Leeds fan looking at your Twitter.
I am, yes. Through thick and thin, there's been an awful lot of thin over the years, but now we're going through a nice rosy period where we are entertaining. Everyone loves us. It's an unusual experience being a Leeds fan when people actually like your team.
They're too young to remember dirty Leeds, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, that's when I first started. So around sort of 73, 74, when I was 4 or 5 years old, that became my team. And from that moment on, I've just had the love of Leeds and the passion for Leeds, and it's never left me.
Yeah, my wife's from Harrogate, so the in-law side of the family are all Leeds fans. So yeah, it's I know all about it.
Yeah, yeah.
In good Surrey tradition, I'm a Palace fan. So
There's a few Palace fans. Mr. Butcher's a Palace fan.
he is, yes, he is, and so is Azhar Ali,
Right,
from Pakistan, which was something when I was chatting to him, we managed to discover, which was a big surprise. But yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Interesting description of you in ESPN Cricket Info. Aggressive, upright, with the ability to swing the ball both ways. Martin Bicknell is the most underrated opening bowler in England. Now, that was probably written in the 90s.
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
But I think that it's a fair reflection, not only of you, but I think of English cricket at that time, that there were a lot of people, and the game, I understand the game is slightly different now, but certainly at that time, and hopefully you can expand on this for me, is that there were a lot of bowlers toiling on the county circuit to try and impress, get wickets, and make a name for themselves. And I think in your wake, David Masters is someone that comes to mind as being a servant of the county game. Would you agree with that description, first of all? And why do you think things have changed, if at all?
Well, my path was reasonably straightforward to play for England. I went on the England tour in 1990-91 as a 21-year-old who wasn't quite ready, but that was the sort of theme you followed as a young bowler. They often took a bowler on an overseas tour who was young, who they were hoping would progress. I was too young when I went to Australia. I wasn't good enough. So I basically struggled a little bit on that trip. Played 7 one-day internationals, played in the state games, got myself injured, had a great time on the tour. But it wasn't until I came back and actually had 2 years of learning my trade a bit more that when I played again in 93, I was definitely ready. I had an outstanding 10 games for Surrey in the championship. I'd taken 63 wickets in 10 games. I was on fire. I got picked to play at Headingley on a flat wicket. Bowled really well, and I got 1 wicket, but they got 650 for 4.
That was your second ball, wasn't it?
It was my 11th ball.
Oh, okay.
I got Mark Taylor out, and then I had to wait 65 overs for my next Test wicket. But bizarrely, I mean, I bowled really well in that Test match. I bowled 50 odd overs for 150, which doesn't sound great, but I went at 3 and over on the flattest pitch going. And then I stayed in for the next Test. It was a bizarre Test. We went to Edgbaston. We turned up and they had Shane Warne and Tim May. We got Edgbaston, for some bizarre reason, produced a pitch with absolutely not a blade of grass on it. So we ended up playing myself and Mark Eilert, and we drafted in John Embury, who was in his 40s, to bowl spin. We consequently lost that match. But again, I bowled really well. And I took 3 for 90 in the first innings on a flat wicket, and I felt like I was really doing myself justice. And then I think the curse of over bowling caught up with me because I wasn't fit. I then went off in between Test matches and played at Worcester, and this would obviously never happen now. And this is where things have massively changed. I bowled 65 overs in a 4-day game.
Oh God!
In between Test matches, which was bonkers. But that was the thing, you went back to play your county, you did your county proud, you tried to win the game. We did win the game. I got 11 wickets in the game. And I was on fire. And I turned up to the Oval for the last Test match and I could barely walk. I had had a knee problem that eventually required surgery. So I was out for the rest of the season, missed the Oval Test match. And then thinking at that stage, I'd probably done enough to get on the tour. And then when the news came out in September, as it did, I wasn't selected. I was absolutely gutted. And then what followed was 2 years of me being really injury prone. So 94 and 95 were really bad years for me. And then basically I had a bit of a rebirth in 96 when Surrey employed David Gilbert as the coach. Adam Hollyoak took over as captain. All of a sudden, I sort of got myself fit and strong again. And then what followed from 96 to 2003 was the best period of my career, where I was, I missed one game a year for 7 years and never got picked for England.
That was an amazing Surrey setup, wasn't it? At that
it
time?
Was. We were a great team, great set of lads. We were on fire. I produced every year. I had 7 years where I almost got to the point where I thought I was fairly, nobody could do what I did, and all the time I was overlooked. It was a period where we had Gough and Caddick and Cork and Mullally played, and people of that ilk. And I was always sort of the next man in, or you might get a chance soon, or there was one occasion we played a Benson Hedges Cup final against Gloucester. Alex Stewart, who's part of the English side, basically gave me the nod that I was in for the next Test match against Australia. And I was, that Sunday morning after the Benson Hedges final, I was waiting for the phone call. They delayed the announcement. It was supposed to be 11 o'clock. And at that point, I thought, oh my God, this is not good. This is not good. I had that sinking feeling when they said they're delaying the announcement. They pushed it back an hour. And then they picked Alex Tudor ahead of me, who'd taken 3 wickets in the Benson Hedges final and bowled well, as had I. But they just changed their mind at the last minute, and that seemed to be the sort of the theme throughout that period.
I've read it that that period has been described as blind man's bluff amongst the selectors, because there wasn't really any rhyme or reason. It just seemed to be sort of picking names out of a hat almost.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was a horrible period for English cricket. We weren't very good, for one thing. We kept getting beat. I was obviously having a lot of success with Surrey, just waiting and hoping my opportunity would come. And then after a while, I thought, no, sod it. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I'm playing a successful side. I'm loving my cricket. I'm successful. It's almost like, why do I want to be part of that show of it looks like ineptness? So after a while, it's sort of the feeling of desperately wanting to play for England sort of disappeared a bit, and I was happy with my lot. And then we got to the stage in 2003 where it was like everyone's getting injured. I took 5 wickets against Nottinghamshire at Whitgift School, bowled really well. And then out of the blue, I took a phone call from David Graveney, which I took a call. I missed it. And I didn't answer it. And then I sort of picked it up later and saw this David Graveney on the phone. Do I listen to his message? At that point, and I was genuinely thinking he was ringing me up to talk about another bowler. I genuinely thought he might be ringing me up to ask my advice about someone. So I didn't ring him back straight away. I got my card. And then I had a phone call from, I think, Shilpa Shetty, who worked for Radio 2, Radio 5 Live at the time. I took the call. As I took the call, I thought, oh my God. And then it just clicked. I thought, I've been picked for England. And no one's really told me. And she told me. She said, oh, congratulations for getting selected for England. Like, what? So it came totally out of the blue. And, it was such a surprise. And my immediate thoughts was, do I really want to do this? It wasn't like I'm really ecstatic to be playing for England. It was like, do I really want to be in, and then all of a sudden, this sort of negativity and stuff comes out of your head that all professional sportsmen have, that, it's like, oh my God, if I play and I do really badly, it's going to be like, well, they're justified in their decision not to pick me for the last 7 years.
Okay, I guess it must have been. Sorry, go on.
I had all these thoughts swirling around in my head, and eventually I spoke to David Graveney. He said, look, come up to Headingley. We don't know if you're going to play. We've picked a few seamers. We're going to look at the pitch. Steve Harmison might be injured, might not be. We'd like you to come up and just be part of the squad. And then I turned up, and it was, honestly, I looked at the pitch and I thought, oh my God, this looks like an absolute field. So at that point on, I thought, well, I'm going to play here. I'm going to play. They're going to pick me. And consequently, Harmison was injured, and then England ended up playing 5 seamers in the game. It was a bizarre decision. We played myself, James Kirtley, Jimmy Anderson, Kabir Ali, and Andrew Flintoff, which you never do now. You'd never pick 5 seamers.
No.
But it was a horrible pitch. It started off green. We obviously won the toss and bowled, and we got off to a great start. I had a bit of a niggling hamstring injury that season, which sort of flared up mid-afternoon, so I didn't bowl much in the afternoon, but I bowled really well when I did bowl. And then we bowled them out. I can't remember what it was. And then we batted really well, and Scottish was going really well, and then got out, and then we had a collapse, and it was sort of the same old England story. We ended up losing the Test match, but I bowled really well in the Test match, and leaving the ground, it was like, well, I'm done. Thank you very much. Nice to have had that opportunity. I knew the next Test match was the Oval, likely to be very flat pitch, not my style at all at 34 years of age. And they said, "Oh, we'll see you at the Oval next week." It's like, what? I don't know. And it was that point again. It's like, well, I'm carrying a bit of a hamstring injury. We're now going to play at the Oval on the flattest wicket in the country against Graham Smith and Jacques Callis and Herschel Gibbs. I was thinking, my God, this might be a bridge too far. I've done really well at Headingley. So I went and had a fitness test, thinking I probably will pull out of the game because I didn't feel like I was going to be fit enough to run in and bowl 40 overs in a Test match. And then bizarrely, it sort of cleared up a little bit. So I thought, right, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to play at the Oval. I'm going to have my last hurrah. I'm going to enjoy it. And then at 360 for 2 on the first day, I'm thinking this probably wasn't such a good idea. The crowd were booing us. It was a horrible experience. I left the ground that night thinking, oh my God, this is horrendous. We've sort of come back and bowl tomorrow. I really enjoy it. And I woke up the next morning on the second day, and it was like, right, okay, just give it a go. Go and enjoy it. It might be the last time you ever play for England. Well, I knew it was going to be my last time I ever played for England. And then Michael Vaughan, second year boys, he threw me the ball, said, right, you have a go. I thought, okay, I'm going to have a go. First over, got a wicket. 2 overs later, got another wicket. And it was like, I'm back in the game. And we bowled out for 480 or something like that. You're not thinking anything. We'll get a draw at best out of this. And we ended up winning the Test match. It was the most bizarre thing to get booed off on day one, coming back and winning the Test match. And obviously, I got 4 wickets in the second innings.
That's right.
Couldn't have bowled any better, and it was a lovely way to sort of bow out. I didn't expect to go on the tour to Bangladesh. Didn't really want to go to Bangladesh, so it wasn't all bad.
Bangladesh was a bit of a tricky place in those days, wasn't it?
My experience was great to finish on that high. Had I finished on a losing side, having not bowled very well, it would have been a bittersweet sort of comeback. But getting 10 wickets in the 2 matches was really special.
And finishing at the Oval as well would have been pretty special.
The win, yeah, it was special.
I was just looking at that team. I was there actually. I remember that game well, and I remember the hostile crowd, because usually the Oval's sort of quite celebratory and end of season party atmosphere, whatever else. So it was a bit unusual. Although I remember being there in 1980, watching England getting pummeled by the West Indies, but it wasn't really booing that day. It was just...
No, I mean, I go to the Oval Test match every year now, and it's a great atmosphere. And it doesn't really matter if England are winning or losing. You get the feeling that it's a great atmosphere. I just think around that time, the sort of 2003, and it was a new era for England coming out of 2003 into 2004, and the birth of Harmison and Flintoff as genuine world-class stars was... the back end of 2003, we were still pretty rubbish. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I was just looking at the 11 that went out in that Test match. Now, you mentioned that, you seem to sort of stand astride of the sort of Embury days and England of old with this new era coming in, which obviously flourished in 2005. But the 11, Marcus Trescothick, Captain Michael Vaughan, Mark Butcher, Graham Thorpe, Ed Smith, who's now chairman of selectors, Alex Stewart, Freddie Flintoff, Ashley Giles, yourself, and Stephen Harmison and Jimmy Anderson.
Not bad, is it? Not a bad side.
Absolutely.
Like I say, it was the birth of Jimmy and Harmy and Fred, who then carried the bowling attack for the next few years. And it would live with me for the rest of my life that I took the new ball ahead of Jimmy Anderson. So. That's the thing I'm going to tell my grandkids most is that Jimmy Anderson, who took 1,500 Test wickets,
You're not going to get
I definitely I outbowled him, which was nice. But I mean, he was he was certainly a star in the making.
And he's showing no signs of letting up, really, is he? I mean, he's still
no, he's a phenomenal athlete. I think that stands him out from everybody else. He's so fit and so strong, and he's you stand next to him and you think he doesn't appear to be very tall.
No,
but you stand next to him and he's really quite tall. And he doesn't bowl like a 6'3" man, but he sort of bowls sort of along the wicket and pushes. He's not into the pitch bowler. But the thing that stands out when you stand next to him, you think he's a strong boy. He's a strong guy. He's wiry. He looks like he can run all day. He's not an ounce of fat on him. He's looked after himself really well. Very grounded, and he's a lovely guy to play with, because he's what you're going to get every time he gets the ball in his hand. He's a fighter. He's competitive. He's got all the attributes of a world-class bowler.
He's quite his off-field personality is very different to his on-field as well. I've found. I've met him a few times, and he's a very sort of humble, quite. I would say shy, but certainly a quiet individual.
I think he is shy. I think he sometimes struggles in that environment of having to be sociable and whatever. But
yeah.
If you get to know him, that's far from the truth. Like most people who are shy, I guess. But he's been a phenomenal cricketer for England, and you can't see him stopping. He's got no desire to stop. So you'd hope that he's going to have a couple more years of being a world-class bowler.
I think that probably on his part, but from the team around him, probably conscious of how to manage injuries as you get to that age, because no one's invincible, and certainly, if you're a fast bowler, you know yourself personally that the spectre of injuries is always sort of lurking in your shadow, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think he's been lucky. And obviously the calf injury he had last year knocked him out for a long time, and that is a result of being slightly older. You don't recover as quick. What he seems to have got away with is sort of long-term injuries, back knee injuries that have sort of would cause him pain every day. I mean, towards the end of my career, I had chronic Achilles issues. I could play through it, but it was killing me. That then becomes a mental thing to keep for that man in the back of your head to say, you need to stop. You need to stop. You need to stop playing now. It's not much fun. You're in pain every day. He doesn't have that, so why wouldn't you keep playing? You're a long time retired. He's at the top of his game. Had I been at the top of my game at 37, I'd have kept playing. But I knew full well that I just couldn't keep going with the injuries and the pain I had. And every day I woke up thinking I'd rather be doing something else. He doesn't have that yet. It will hit him at some point. He will come to the point, like a Graham Swan or whatever, like a Matt Pryor, who will turn around and say that I can't do it anymore. Yeah. And it'll just hit him. And then at that point, you've got to bow out gracefully.
Do you think there's more understanding as well, just with technology and the level of analysis in modern sport, that might have been not quite such the case in the 90s and
absolutely. Yeah, I think the sports nutrition, the recovery, the science behind how much you can and can't do, and the understanding from a bowler what you need to recover each day. You can't. Gone are the days where you can have 4 pints and get up next day and bowl 25 overs. Those days
only
are
4.
long. Oh well, yeah. That was a quiet night. That was a Monday night.
I mean, that just looking at going back to that Oval Test team, we talk about strength and conditioning, shall we say? That must have been a very, very lively dressing room with those characters there.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I played for England in 1990-91, where we had Gower and Gooch in the same dressing room, and one was a fitness freak, would run every day. Looked after himself, and the other guy, his attitude to life was, I'm only going to drink on the days where we don't have a day off the next day. Because if he drank and had a day off the next day, his theory was he was going to ruin his day off. So he'd rather be drinking when he's playing cricket the next day, so he can manage himself through it. That was David Gower to a T. Yeah, just an outstanding cricketer, but played in a different era and had a different approach. And obviously, had I been part of the era now, with the knowledge that we have around bowling and whatever, I mean, I probably wouldn't have bowled so much as a youngster. I might have not had the injuries I had. I mean, I played to 37 for a bowler. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I played 21 years. And sometimes you think, well, how was I able to do that? And it was possibly because I bowled quite a lot when I was young and my body was used to it. Whereas bowlers now are being taught not to bowl as much, and time will tell whether they have a longer career or not. But there's no substitute for bowling to get bowling fit, and there's no way around that. So it's a fine line and fine balance between strength and conditioning and the scientists being in control of how many you bowl, and your own body, and knowing what you can and can't do.
I think what you touched on with Gooch and Gower would make for a very, very interesting documentary or book, because that really the clash of personalities and styles was quite evident, and I think that'd be really a really interesting thing for somebody to explore one day. So it's interesting that you mentioned that.
It was always going to be a crossover of styles.
Yeah,
there was always going to be that sort of person who came in and said, right, okay, I'm going to do it this way, and the person who said, I've done it this way all my life, I'm going to carry on the way I'm doing it. And so there's always going to be a crossover. And even when I was playing towards the end of my career, there was a lot of stuff that was coming in that was changing. There was, and I was still of an era where after the end of a day play, having a few drinks was the way to go. But you don't see many cricketers drinking now in between games.
A couple of ciggies,
but not during a game.
Yeah,
the game has changed.
Yeah, and I think Gooch still looms large over Essex, and you've only got to look at the development of Alistair Cook, who Gooch took under his wing at a very young age, and to see the values instilled in Sir Alistair, to see the Gooch way, if you like, and the way of playing and the way of the standards and behaviour, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you couldn't wish to find a better role model than Graham Gooch. So the Essex guys who are lucky enough to work with him have benefited massively.
Yeah, and you've got in the current crop Dan Lawrence, who's just sort of breaking through. So it's evident there. Before you go, I'd just like a quick word from you. Obviously, last week we had the sad news of the passing of Joey Benjamin, and he was obviously a Surrey colleague of yours. And I just would appreciate a couple of words on the big man. Yeah,
I mean, I've known Benji. Benji came and lived with me when he first joined Surrey. I think it was, I can't remember what year it was. I'm going to say 92 or something like that. When he first joined Surrey, he lived with me for that summer. Just a really easygoing guy, nice to be around, never said a bad word about anybody. And as a bowler, an exceptional period around sort of 94, 95 when I was injured, where he carried the Surrey attack, played a massive part of Surrey, and and it was an incredibly sad loss and unnecessary, because I mean, he was fit as a fiddle. He was still playing for the Surrey Masters. I hadn't seen him for a little while because of COVID. But whenever we saw each other, we got on like a house on fire, and it's an incredibly sad loss. I mean, bizarrely, the Surrey. So what it's done is brought together on a WhatsApp group about 40 different people now,
wow,
part of the Surrey sort of reunion group, who are now back in contact. So it takes something like that for us to be back in contact with people like Brendan Julian and David Gilbert, and all the guys who played in that era with Joey, for us to all come back together and share our memories. So it's been quite cathartic in the last week or so to speak about him and meet up again and by the power of WhatsApp. And we've shared some great stories, and it's an incredibly sad loss, because Benji was loved by everybody. It wasn't a bad word to say. No one had a bad word to say about him, and he was quite a unique character. Unfortunately, we've suffered our fair few over the years, and unfortunately Joey's on that list now of people we're really going to miss.
It's never easy. I guess it's getting near time for you to be ringing the school bell and taking registration or whatever it is you do. Thank you for telling us about Joey, and some really interesting stuff about your cricketing career. And I'm sure it's all going well at Charterhouse. Are you still turning your arm over these days at all?
Well, I will have to, because I'm still playing for Lashing. So I've got my summer's fixtures out now, and hopefully, after COVID, we'll be back and touring the country with Lashing. So I shall be dusting off my bowling boots and bowling a few at the boys, trying to build up a bit of confidence and a bit of match fitness. So I'm looking forward to some warm, sunny days ahead when we can get outside and play some cricket. So, yeah, it's been a pretty awful last year for everybody, and I think we all need a bit of sunlight and warmth and happier times.
Absolutely. Martin Bicknell, ex-Surrey, England, and now Charterhouse. Many thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
Bye.